我给电话里说了，我说你来中国什么都不要，我们是吧？我原木我养的你，我说什么都不要，我说什么退休金，我说无所谓，什么医疗保障，我说你看病我给拿钱，我会负责到底的。
A Chinese young man, to repay a debt of gratitude, brought his Swiss landlord to China to spend his remaining years, taking care of his meals and medical treatment, all to repay the kindness of being allowed to live rent-free for 8 years. What kind of deep affection existed between the two, that made the Swiss old man willing to give up everything and come to China just because of one sentence? Their bond began when Song Yong went to study in the United Kingdom. At the age of 19, Song Yong went abroad alone to study. At first, he was full of expectations, but being alone in a foreign country, he was quickly beaten down by reality. The first problem Song Yong had to solve was renting a place to live, as he would be staying there for several years. But after searching the entire city, he couldn't find a house at an affordable price. Feeling dejected, he returned to the hotel as usual, but unfamiliar with the roads, he got lost and took the wrong bus. Realizing his mistake, Song Yong had to get off and wait for another bus. Just when Song Yong was feeling lost, an old foreign man came up to him and kindly asked why he looked so downhearted. In a foreign country, being cared for like this all of a sudden, Song Yong poured out all the troubles he had experienced over the past few days. The old man thought Song Yong might be Japanese or Korean, but when Song Yong firmly said he was Chinese, the old man suddenly became intrigued, because he had always been curious about the ancient Eastern country. The two started chatting casually. Through their conversation, Song Yong learned that the old man's name was Hans, a Swiss national. His mother died when he was 3 years old, and after his father remarried, his stepmother treated him very poorly. So Hans left home and never returned. He remained single all his life, wandering around doing various jobs. He had been a salesman and even ran a bar, drifting from place to place for many years. It was only in his later years that he settled in the United Kingdom. Although Song Yang's English was not fluent, it didn't stop them from communicating. Later, Hans invited Song Yong to visit his home. Without much thought, Song Yong agreed, because he felt the old man was trustworthy. When he arrived at Hans's home, he found it to be very simple, a 40-square-meter one-bedroom apartment, with old furniture and outdated decor. Perhaps because he lived alone, there was dust everywhere, making the place look quite lonely. Out of sympathy for Hans, an elderly man living alone, Song Yong cooked several Chinese dishes for him, and after dinner, took the initiative to clean the house, making it tidy and neat. Before leaving, Song Yong left his phone number, telling Hans that he could call him if he ever needed help. But he never expected that call to come so soon. After leaving Hans's home, Song Yong continued searching for a place to rent for several days. Just when he was sinking into deep despair, Hans called and asked if he had found a place yet. Song Yong replied that he hadn't. So Hans said, "If you don't mind, you can come live with me, and I won't charge you rent, just keep me company and chat with me." This offer made Song Yong overjoyed, because Hans's home was right in the city center, close to the school. This way, Song Yong could save rent and also take care of Hans. At first, Song Yong hesitated a bit, but after so many frustrating days, he agreed. And so, two people with a 47-year age gap, different skin colors, and different nationalities began living together. Having been lonely for most of his life, Hans could now enjoy Song Yang's home-cooked meals. They had endless things to talk about every day. Since Song Yong came to study and hadn't yet found a suitable school, Hans accompanied him to look for schools, even more diligently than Song Yong himself. Each time they visited a school, Hans would note down the tuition, material fees, and procedures, and even went to the embassy to help him handle the admission documents. Because Song Yong lacked funds, he could only study while working part-time. Hans would help him as much as he could and even found him part-time jobs. Sometimes Hans would even work alongside him. To repay him, during the 8 years they lived together, Song Yong took care of Hans every day with devotion. Eating together, chatting and looking after each other. Their relationship grew deeper and deeper. Hans treated Song Yong selflessly, like family. The two relied on and supported each other, making life brighter and more joyful. Even the neighbors said Hans had become energetic and cheerful, smiling every day. But this beautiful time only lasted 8 years. With Hans's help, Song Yong successfully completed his studies and obtained a master's degree. But as the saying goes, there is no feast that lasts forever. Song Yong had come to study, and after finishing, he would eventually have to return to his hometown Zhengzhou to develop his career. After they parted, without Song Yang's care, Hans could barely live on his own, losing his appetite and spirit. Song Yong also missed him deeply, so international phone calls became their daily routine. Because of the time difference between the two countries, Hans often called Song Yong in Zhengzhou in the middle of the night. Song Yong never complained, always talking patiently with him. Still, he couldn't stop worrying about Hans living alone, so he hired someone to look after him. But that person didn't do a good job, so Hans ended up living alone again. Song Yong had to ask the neighbors to keep an eye on him. One time, Hans went out and didn't come back for a long while, so the neighbors called Song Yong to tell him. Song Yong sent them all the places Hans might go and the routes he usually took. Following those directions, the neighbors eventually found Hans by the roadside. It turned out he had gone to a bar to drink because he felt lonely.
I felt very lonely. I missed you, of course, and I looked forward to be with you again.
This was a bond that went beyond nationality and blood. Song Yong couldn't stop worrying about Hans living alone, so he decided to return to London to visit him. When he saw Hans again, he realized the old man could no longer take care of himself. His femoral head necrosis had become very serious. Seeing this situation filled Song Yong with regret and sadness, so he decided to bring Hans to China for care and treatment. Hans didn't hesitate at all and gave up everything in the United Kingdom.
免费的医疗，英国是一个非常高福利的国家，老年人一切政府都给包了，但是他通通不要了，就是说要到中国来找我。当时很多人也说让他考虑，他是说下定了决心，因为这份情舍真是难舍这份情啊，这个感觉。
Song Yang's parents gladly agreed after learning about it, because they knew how deep the bond between the two was, and that during the 8 years in the United Kingdom, Hans had cared deeply for Song Yong. In June 2008, Hans crossed the ocean and came to China. Song Yong prepared a room for him, and his family treated Hans as one of their own, cooking for him and taking care of his health. Song Yong even paid for Hans's medical treatment out of his own pocket, and it was Song Yong who signed the surgery consent form. During the operation, severe bleeding occurred, leaving Song Yong extremely anxious. When Hans lay on the bed after surgery, looking pale and frail, Song Yong was deeply worried. Every day he personally took care of Hans, washing his body and feeding him, just like he would care for his own family. Soon, under the careful care of Song Yong and his family, Hans recovered quickly, almost without any after-effects, and could even joke and play around with Song Yong again. After being discharged, Song Yang's family specially prepared Chinese dishes to celebrate. Hans, who lived in Song Yang's home, was no longer as reserved as before. At the dinner table, he laughed and joked with everyone, feeling very happy. After coming to China, Hans lived a joyful life every day. Song Yong often took him to taste various Chinese foods, visit tourist attractions, and experience rural life, traveling across China's beautiful landscapes. During the Spring Festival, Hans celebrated with Song Yang's family, eating together and watching the Spring Festival Gala. Facing this family without blood ties, Hans couldn't help but feel deeply emotional. He had never imagined that he could live such a happy life in his lifetime. In addition, Hans became an English teacher for the neighborhood children, and they all loved him. Although Hans lived in China for more than 4 years, he never obtained a Chinese green card and could only stay on a work visa, which had to be renewed every year. To help Hans stay in China permanently, Song Yong tried to apply for a green card for him. When the procedures were delayed for too long, Song Yong shared their story online, asking people to vote in support of Hans staying in China. Unfortunately, Hans's health deteriorated again. In 2012, Hans was hospitalized with heart failure. Knowing his life was nearing the end, he told Song Yong that he loved China, loved this place, and wanted to stay on this land forever. After Hans passed away, Song Yong fulfilled his wish and buried him in the land he loved most. In the end, Hans spent the final part of his life in China. Although this happiness lasted only 6 years, Hans felt deeply content. Kindness knows no borders, and neither does love. A chance encounter at a train station in the United Kingdom, a casual conversation, and a shared meal warmed the heart of a young Chinese man named Song Yong. Through 8 years of companionship, they had long become family.
In this world, people are often separated by race, distance, and language. But this Chinese young man and his Swiss landlord proved with their lives that love and gratitude know no borders. Hans came to China not for money or comfort, but to fulfill a promise, a bond deeper than blood. And Song Yong, the young man who once received warmth in a foreign land, chose to spend his life repaying that kindness. When Hans closed his eyes for the last time on Chinese soil, he was not alone, because this had already become his home. This is not just a story of repaying kindness, but a resonance between two souls across borders, a kindness that crossed oceans, and a love that the world will never forget. Do you believe that true friendship can cross nations in a lifetime? Share your thoughts in the comments. I truly look forward to hearing your voice. See you in the next episode.